on Always and Forever, we have such an amazing guest, Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen 2010 and Miss Florida 2015, MaryKatherine Black.
Great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm so excited. Can you share a bit about who you are, where are you from, and how you got involved in the program?
Yeah, so MaryKatherine Fechtel, just within the last year, became MaryKatherine Black. And I am in the process of moving to Florida, back to Florida, my home turf. But I have been living in California the last 3.5 years, working in nonprofit work for women's ministry and anti-human trafficking work. But how I became Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen in 2000, oh my gosh, was I 2010?
I think so.
I have no idea what year I was. I think it was 2010 is actually a funny story because it was a long time ago. I'm old. You're the spring chicken, and I am an old fart at this point. I was in a family that was kind of around pageant culture, all these different pageants, but not much of the Miss America organization. And so my older sister, when she was a teenager, was going to compete for Miss Orlando's teen, and that would take her to Miss Florida's teen. Bottom line is she was already doing the pageant thing, and I wasn't at the time. And she entered Miss Orlando's teen. And so because she already had a different pageant title, she actually wasn't allowed to compete. But my family had already donated the mandatory $50 entry fee, which was a Children's Miracle Network donation, essentially. But I come from a really cheap family, and they're like, we already paid this $50 donation. So MaryKatherine, you're a year younger. I know you don't want to do this, but you're doing it. And I fought for a little bit, but I recognized that I had everything that it took to compete. I was just afraid of the interview process, bottom line. I was a dancer my whole life, and I had that part. I knew I could put a dress on. I knew I could get coached on walking, even though every time I was coached on walking, they would say it looked like I was bowling because I would swing my arms so much. Ask anyone who watched me compete for Miss Florida's teen, and they'll say she looked like she was bowling during evening gown. But that's how it all began for me, and I won Miss Orlando's teen. Then I competed at Miss Florida's teen, and still am friends with some of the girls. Gosh, that was 10 years ago. But still am friends with some of the girls that I competed with, and won that, and then went to Miss America's teen when I was 14, 15. Honestly, I can't remember, something like that.
Teenager. That's so awesome. I love that. Yeah, Elizabeth is awesome. She was my judge for Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen, and I remember walking into the interview room because I looked up to you both so much, and my jaw just dropped and being like, wow, that's
She's amazing. Yeah. So then she came back the year later, and I gave up my Miss Florida's teen crown. She won Miss Florida's teen, then went on to win Miss America's teen, no big deal, and won the whole thing. So it was just a funny sister story that she was supposed to do it in the first place. I held her place for about a year just on the floor level, and then she came and blew everybody out of the water.
I love that. So looking back on almost 10 years ago, what was one of your favorite memories from your year as Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. And again, you're testing my memory because for me and my family, it felt like those 5 or 6 years of my sister and I competing all were in one. It felt like one giant stretch of pageant land. Best years. But when I think back about the most marking memories as Miss Florida's teen, there were some great appearances, but the most shaping thing was preparing for interview with my local directors, Donald Gray and Juan Cantu, who are still in my life, and just going to their house and at such a young age being asked really hard questions that I didn't know the answers to. that I tried to pretend I had the level of intellect that I needed to answer these questions. But in reality, it was so stretching to me to have to come up with a cohesive answer that it was miserable at times. But I came out of that year and out of my time as Miss Florida's teen, in love with the process of being stretched like that. And that's something that has shaped my whole life, is just being addicted to growth, because my year at such a young age and entering into conversations, interviews, speaking gigs, when frankly, I probably sucked. I was probably terrible. I'm so glad that the internet back then, even though it was just 10 years ago, is not what it is now, because I would probably have been a meme. I probably would have been posted on YouTube and made fun of, because I was a mess. I was a total mess, but somehow I made it through. Somehow I learned a lot during that year. And yeah, just frankly, the best memories were preparing for interview with these two directors who were so caring, who were so patient with me, and who kept believing in me when at a young age, I honestly didn't have any belief in myself. I was just stumbling through life, trying to get through high school, you know?
I feel that right now. I think that just speaks to the testament of the importance of strong mentors. And at least for me, like, I found so many of those throughout this program. And like you, I'm obsessed with the process. I remember once I was crowned, and after MFLOTeen was over, I go, Mom, I miss preparing for the competition, the aspect of practicing questions and seeing myself grow. So that's
Yeah.
amazing that you recognize that at such a young age, and you came out an even greater version of yourself.
Yeah. And I think it showed me, not just competing in teen, but also competing in Miss, it showed me that we're meant for progress as humans. That if we're not doing something that feels too hard or challenging or scary, that there's a part of life that we're missing out on. And I had to face that even in starting my business. I went back to the place of, oh shoot, I'm becoming vulnerable and I'm doing something that I could fail at. But it gives you an adrenaline rush of humility, almost, of recognizing that you're human. And if this isn't what life is for, then what is it for? Is going after stuff and becoming everything that you're meant to be. And that's why I love the Miss America organization so much, is that it's trained so many women like me to really aim for the highest level of who we can be and to never stop that. So you're right. I've had moments where I've gotten in kind of ruts ever since giving up my Miss Florida title, where I felt a little bit stagnant in my growth and I haven't really felt challenged. And because of that organization, I now live knowing the difference between just getting by and between taking lots of risks.
Well, I know you carried a lot of that in your college life, going to the University of Florida, super involved, being in a sorority, being crowned Miss UF, being on the Dazzlers dance team. What is one thing you wish you could tell your younger self that's navigating student life right now? Because I know that there's so many people listening who are going into college, or like me, thinking about where they're going to go to college.
Yeah, good question. You know, the one regret that I have of college is not taking my time by the horns. Especially a big university like UF, there's so many opportunities. And if you have my personality, you want to go and be and do everything. So I was going and doing everything on campus and involved in all sorts of leadership, clubs, organizations, like just killing the game when it came to involvement, which is kind of a prestigious thing in college, is how involved are you? You know, what are you doing? And all that's great. And I don't regret being involved in anything. Those college days were so marking for me. But I did fall a victim to the schedules that were placed on me. So I had every moment of my college career booked by all of my involvement that I didn't necessarily take ownership of where I spent my time. And I felt like I had to be super spread thin. And because of that, I lived college really tired, but also having the time of my life. So I think if I could go back, I would do everything just the same, but I would have Sundays where I said no to friends. I would have Wednesday nights where I said, sorry, I can't show up to that meeting. I've got to take time for myself. Because it's really easy when you're involved in a lot of things to just go, and not have the ability to just look around, enjoy it, and give yourself what you need.
Yeah, that's so important, especially as a student navigating, you're balancing all these different things. And I think, at least for me, I always forget to take time for myself. That's, I find, is lowest on my priority list. And so it's important to move that up there. So something that you accomplished, you were Miss UF, but then you were crowned Miss Florida 2015. Do you think, looking back, being an outstanding teen really helped you prepare for the job of Miss Florida and sort of navigate life as Miss Florida in your year?
Totally. I don't know where I'd be if I wasn't Miss Florida's teen first. I mean, just practically, you walk into a competition like that knowing that you've done something like it before, and it doesn't feel like an ethereal, unknown region where you have no idea what's going on. You have a little bit of confidence knowing you've done an interview like this before, and you have a sense for the job of Miss Florida. And so I walked into Miss Florida knowing that the level of competition was way different and that a lot more was expected of me, but it didn't feel like strange territory. So for anybody who's one day considering maybe you want to be Miss Florida, Miss America, it would be stupid not to compete in the teen program.
Yeah, I know that watching Miss America on this past year in December, and all of us teens, we go and cheer on our misses, but it was so cool to watch the girls who had been an outstanding teen before and now competing on the Miss America stage, especially my Miss Florida, Michaela. Have to give her a shout out.
Exactly.
So you had this amazing year as Miss Florida. You left such an amazing legacy. What was your greatest takeaway from that year of service?
So many. I was thinking about this though. There's probably been 8 or 9 different Miss America contestants from different years over the last 4 years since I've competed that have had phone or FaceTime conversations with me about this exact thing I'm about to say. And that is that sometimes what you think is the goal is not actually what's best for your life. And when I competed at Miss America, I had a ton of belief that I could be Miss America. Same with Miss Florida. I had a ton of belief that if it was right and if it was ordained and if it was the best thing, that I would be Miss Florida, and if not, I would move on. But what I didn't see when I competed at Miss America was that if I did not win Miss America, that there was an incredible path that could have never happened if I had won Miss America. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite scriptures is he works all things for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purposes, right? So I believed that, but I had never seen so tangibly the way that was true until after Miss America passed. And it was a bummer, but I was so excited to go back to my state. I mean, I love being Miss Florida. I know that it's all for the good. And so I go back and I become Miss Florida. Again, I stay Miss Florida. And later, I get my dream job opportunity that I couldn't even put words around, that opened up during the time that I would still have been Miss America if I won. From that, I moved to California and I met my husband. And I look back on my competition time at Miss America, and I realize now that if I had won, I would have been Miss America during the time that the job that changed my life opened up. And I don't know how I would have met my husband if I'd never taken that job. And so at the time when I was competing, it's like, well, of course Miss America is the best option. Of course it's a bummer if I don't win. But I didn't have the insight of what was coming down the road, and that it was actually a setup from God for me not to win Miss America. So I've had a lot of conversations with former Miss America contestants about this, especially after they come back from Miss America and they're just like bummed. They're like, I really wanted to be Miss America. And I'm like, yeah, but look what happened to me. This could actually be divine intervention. And also, as I competed for Miss America, and even as I competed for Miss Florida and I ended up winning, there were so many contestants that could have been probably a better Miss Florida than me. Frankly, I thought they might win. I knew I might win, but also I thought they would make a great Miss Florida. And we're in the game of pageantry, which is like, you know what? Sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes there's a lot of women that can win. And sometimes it's God's mighty hand that's preventing you from winning because there's something different that he has an assignment for that next year.
That's so true. There's, I think it was Tim Tebow that I heard this from, where, we can only see what's around the corner, but God can see what's around every other corner after that. And just speaking to that, God always has a plan for our lives, even if we can't see it. And that's so cool how you realize that after Miss America, that you said, all right, God has a plan and you're going to be faithful to him. And sort of bouncing off of that, let's talk a little bit about your job with Propel Women conferences and the anti-human trafficking industry. How did you get involved in that, and what made you so passionate behind those jobs?
Yeah, so like I said, I shortly after I gave up my Miss Florida title, I attended a Propel Women conference in Dallas with my friend Sarah, and I ended up volunteering and meeting the team. And at that time in my life, it's kind of a fun, pivotal moment for me because I had just begun this journey of understanding what the voice of God sounds like. And it was the first time that I felt 100% confident that I heard the voice of God, that I understood what he was speaking to me as I was assisting and volunteering at that conference. And that was that I was going to work for them one day. But I did not tell anyone that I was in a transition. I was not, networking, pitching myself. I just felt like that wasn't the way. And plus, I didn't want to move to California at the time, so it didn't make logical sense to me. But after that weekend, I received an email from the team saying, would you ever be interested in working out here in California with us? And from there, it was a matter of 2 or 3 months before plans were being made for me to move. And then I worked for A21, the anti-human trafficking organization, for about a month before my leadership came to me and said, would you be interested in working for Propel Women? And, knowing me, everyone's like, well, of course she did. That's what she loves. And so then I started traveling around with Propel Women conferences and just learned so much from my leader, Christine Kane, getting to be behind the scenes and in moments with her where true character stood out and where I was able to learn so much has shaped me and will shape me the rest of my life. But after a few years of being on the road, I got married, sensed that the season was shifting and that I needed to have a healthy marriage. I needed to not be on the road all the time, and also had God put on my heart really, really heavily to start a business. And that's around the time that we got the idea to start a clothing business.
Love that. It's just the coolest digital fashion brand. I absolutely love all the clothes from there. I was talking to my mom about it yesterday. We're placing an order soon.
I'm so glad because, I'm not young and hip like you anymore. Like I said, I'm like almost 25. So what are we going to do? I got to stay cool. And if you say it's cool, it's cool.
Oh, it's totally cool. What inspired you to start that company?
Yeah, it was a lot of practicality, a lot of just looking at my skill set, my gift set. There was never a billboard, or I was never infatuated with the dream of starting a digital fashion company. It was more so, I want to learn business, and what are the gifts I have? What are the things that I can capitalize on? And having modeled quite a bit before and after my time as Miss Florida, I knew what it took to run that aspect of the company, the photo shoot division, even the photography. I had some insight on how all the inventory came in and left, and the scheduling for photo shoots. So I felt like I had a little bit of a leg up in that realm, and also was just interested in learning business. So I was waiting for a while. I prayed on that for a long time because I was really hoping to have some crazy sexy idea for a product that would become the next Amazon, and that wasn't the case. It was starting small, despising not the day of small beginnings, as scripture says, and now it's been the time of my life, just launching Yellow the Label.
I love that. And there's a meaning behind that name.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how the name came to you and your meaning behind it?
Yeah, so I didn't know at the time that this is a common issue for entrepreneurs, but I could not come up with a name. I had the concept, I had the clothes, I had the vibes that I wanted to give the label, but didn't have a name, which was so annoying. I was on dictionary.com, thesaurus.com, like just trying to think of cool things to call it. So annoyed for like 3 months straight. Just like, okay, can you drop from heaven the name of this brand? And I was considering opening up entering into a partnership with someone. So at 4 a.m. the day before I left to go fly to Atlanta to present to them my idea, I was praying and I was like, God, I gotta get a name for this thing. Like, help. And I just started recollecting and remembering all the times that God had even spoken to me over the last year. I'm like flipping through my iPhone diary, like, please have something in here. And I remembered that months prior, I had this insane encounter in the nighttime, where the first time in my life I heard God's audible voice. And when I met my husband, I never really dreamed. I would go to bed and just expect to wake up the same. But when I met him, he would have all these crazy stories about, the directional dreams he had in the night. And I'm like, I want that. Like, how can I get that? And what I didn't know is that it's accessible for everyone if we just ask for it. And so I began asking. I would, go to bed and pray, like, all right, Lord, what do you want to say? Here we go. And just go to bed and pray for dreams. And sometimes they'd be crazy and mean nothing at all. And it would be like the bad pizza that I ate the night before. And then sometimes I would get little nuggets of wisdom that I just felt like were divine. And it was insane. So this one particular night where I had this encounter, it was so real. It completely changed my life. God spoke to me about something going on in my life. I heard his audible voice. I saw a vision of some things that in different scenes that were shifting, but it had nothing to do with the clothing business. It really didn't. And so I hadn't considered that encounter as a namesake for the dream until that morning when I was desperate and I began recollecting all the different characteristics of that encounter. And I remembered that the visual marking characteristic was that everything was colored in a golden yellow color. And you look in Revelation and it talks about the streets of gold. You go back into what that word actually means, and it means golden yellow. And so I thought of Yellow the Label. That's it. Let's do it. And I never thought of anything different, and we went with it.
That's amazing. And I know that you've had so much growth since you launched it, and everyone's just loving it. I'm so excited to see it continue to grow. So I have some questions that I like to ask every person that's on Always and Forever. And so the first one is, who's one of your favorite Forever Miss Floridas and or Miss Americas?
I have a lot, but Katie Stam was the Miss America that I saw. I don't know how old I was, and that was the first time that I was like, that chick is awesome. I want to be like her. And I was a little girl. I don't remember how old I was, but I saw just dignity and integrity and beauty and elegance and excellence and conviction over her life. And I just fell in love with her at a young age. And I've been able to meet her since, and we're Instagram friends. And I've told her that, but she was the first one that made me go, holy mackerel, I want to be like that. And I get what Miss America is now.
That's so cool. I know there's such amazing role models through this, like you. What was your favorite area of competition when you were competing for teen and Miss?
So teen, it was definitely not interview, but in Miss, it was definitely interview. I loved the challenge, and I loved the realness behind the brand of Miss America. I knew that I loved it wasn't a beauty competition, and if I was best fit for the job, then I knew I'd win because of that interview. And if someone else was best fit for the job, because it is a job, I knew somebody else would win.
Absolutely. That interview is such an important thing. It's the first thing that they see of you, and I think they can really fall in love with you in that interview room. So what's your best piece of pageant advice for girls who are competing this August for the job of Miss Florida and Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen?
Yeah, this one might be controversial, but know that you can win. I mean, I always get so shocked when winners are shocked that they won. If you don't believe that you have what it takes to win, then why are you competing? Yeah, it's great to grow, but you should believe in yourself enough to know there's a possibility I could win this because I have what it takes. And if you have that mentality, and if you see yourself through truth and you see yourself for who you are, then you shouldn't actually be shocked if you're in top 5. If they call your name for the winner, you should know, wow, the judges started to see me for who I am, and I did a great job showcasing that. So going back into competition, if I could compete again, I would already kind of consider myself Miss America, because even if they don't crown me that, I know that I can do that, and I know that I can be what Miss America is to people, even if I don't have a fancy crown and sash. So I'd say to the contestants, start to picture yourself as the version of you that would be crowned that.
Yeah, live every day as if you were already Miss Florida or Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen or Miss America. Live like that already. So how can people keep up with you and Yellow the Label on social media?
Well, I'm best on Instagram. I am on Facebook, but my Instagram is MaryKatherine Black, spelled just like it sounds. And Yellow's is Yellow the Label, just like it sounds.
Awesome. Everyone go check them out. Thank you so much for coming on here. I loved hearing your testimony, your story of growth throughout this years of being involved in the Miss Florida organization. And I'm so excited to see what your next steps are coming back to the Sunshine State. That's so exciting.
Yeah. Great to talk to you, Hannah.